Welcome to the Hundredfold Journey. We help people step out of religious bondage and into true abundance. We invite you to embark on a journey, a spiritual journey called the Hundredfold. At a Hundredfold, we are a group of people developing new thoughts, habits, and beliefs to understand our true identity, to live our life purpose and experience the abundant life just the way Jesus did. Our mission is to provide support, encouragement, and resources to help you on your journey. The life you are meant to live is closer than you think. The journey is the destination, and your journey starts now. Good morning, Doug here from the Hundredfold Journey. Thanks again for joining us on this Grace Awakening Network program. We're on a journey together, and we want to invite you to join us so that you would know your true identity, live your life purpose, and experience true abundance. Because a Hundredfold is about a group of people that are looking to find their true identity, and by doing so, finding God's true identity. So thanks again for joining us today. We are in a series called The Kingdom Parables, which is found in Mark chapter 4. And Jesus had a very interesting statement. He said, if you can't understand the meaning of this parable, how will you understand all the parables? So what I like to call this is the parable of parables, the seed and the sower, and exactly what that means. And in Mark chapter 4, there are various parables that all talk about the seed and the sower and how that operates and how that works in our lives. And the way it works is that we are the sower. The sower is you. We are the ones that are planting the seeds. And the seeds are either God's words, or your thoughts, which is in you, because we have the mind of Christ. So think of our thoughts as planting seeds. And the soil is our faith. That's our heart. Just as a reminder, I cover this each week, and it's just a reminder of how this works, right? We have our mind, which is our thoughts, which is word, and these are the promises of God, knowing they are true for you and knowing your true identity, that you are the dwelling place of God. God dwells within us, every single one of us. And then our heart, which is love, we want to be loving with no judgment to ourselves or to others, and that we trust that we've been given everything for life and godliness. We're from a heart state, a heartfelt gratitude, and it comes from rest. And that's the soil. So what ends up happening is we have a thought, we have the word of God. For example, we've been given everything for life and godliness. That's the seed. And then it drops into the soil of belief. And then from there, it grows. But there needs to be a mind-heart coherence. There needs to be an agreement. We have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. And those thoughts are seeds. Which are the ones that we truly believe? Are they the seeds that say, I've been given everything that I need? And do we agree with that? Then we will be given everything we need. But if the seed is, I'm sick or I'm never good enough, and your heart agrees with that, then that's what will manifest. That's what will be produced. That's the seed that will grow. So to dig a little deeper into what that might look like, there is a parable, which actually isn't a parable. It's actually an event that occurred, but I found it very interesting that it's in Mark chapter 4, and I'm calling it the seed and seed. And here it is. Again, Mark chapter 4. On that day, when evening came, he said to them, and the he is capitalized, so that's Jesus, let us go over to the other side. Leaving the crowd, they took him along with them in the boat, just as he was, and other boats were with him. And there arose a fierce gale of wind, and the waves were breaking over the boat so much that the boat was already filling up. Jesus himself was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him and said, Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? And he got up, he rebuked the wind and said to the sea, Hush, be still. And the wind died down, and it became perfectly calm. And he said to them, "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They became very much afraid and said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" All right. So there's the visual, right? They've got a ship, and the storm arises, and Jesus is in the stern asleep on a cushion, and the disciples are freaking out. So the question is what seed was planted? So for those that are online, what seed was planted in this story? What was the thought, or what was the word that was spoken, which represents the seed?
Um, I would say making a choice. Let us go from here to there.
Right. So you say the word choice, but it wasn't, it was you could say it was a command,
Mm.
right? He said to them, "Let us go over to the other side." So that was the seed that was planted. And remember, Jesus only did what he saw the Father do, and he spoke what he heard the Father say. So this was a command from Jesus to his disciples, which, for all intents and purposes, was a command from God, right?
Mm.
Let us go over to the other side. So the seed that was planted was, let us go over to the other side. That makes sense?
Hmm.
So what happened to the seed when Jesus heard that word? What was Jesus's response?
Um, to go to the other side, to leave, to
Right,
make a decision.
right. So he decided
Yeah.
that he would listen to that word and do what it said. And then what was his response? How did he respond? I mean, he was in agreement, right? So that was a response that he agreed with that word. But then what did he do next?
Um, just that he was in the boat and he got in and rested.
There you go. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And in fact, he did even more than rest. He was asleep. And interesting is that sleep is the same word from the farmer who slept. So if you go back a couple of parables, when the farmer sowed the seed, he went to bed at night, he went to sleep at night, and then he woke up the next morning and there was a crop. So that same word that he slept is the same one, same word for what Jesus did after the seed was sown. Let us go over to the other side. And then Mark chapter 4:9 just says, "He who has ears, let him hear." So Jesus heard the word, right? So he had mind heart coherence. He agreed with the word of God that says, "Let us go over to the other side." So here's the seed that was planted, and this was his response. And remember, on our very first parable, the seed and the sower, there were four soils that the seed landed on. And the rocky soil, the shallow soil, and then it got choked out soil. This soil, which was what Jesus did, is it produced the crop of going to the other side. So he was at a state of rest, knowing that the word that he agreed with would come to pass, and he believed it so much that he just went to sleep, right? He had full faith, full confidence. So now let's take a look at the disciples now, right? So what seed was planted for the disciples?
Um, Fear.
Right, but the same seed was planted.
They got in the
So
boat.
it's kind of a trick question. the same seed. Jesus had the same seed. They both heard, or they all heard,
Mm.
let us go over to the other side, right?
Mm.
So the same seed was planted. Now, here's where the difference is. What happened to the seed when the disciples heard it, and what was their response?
Um, well, they looked at the storm and became fearful.
Exactly, exactly, right? So they
They
looked at the external,
the 3D.
the 3D, exactly. They looked at the 3D and says, wait a second, I know that God said, let's go over to the other side, but what about these gales of wind and the waves crashing on the boat? And then they even got to the point where they were, yelling at Jesus. And in this case, you could say they were yelling at God, right? Don't you
Mm.
care? I could just see them raising their fist at Jesus, who's asleep. Don't you care? Don't you understand the circumstances I'm under? I know you told us to go to the other side, but we can't do that. Look at all the waves. Look at all the circumstances. Look at all the conditions. This does not make sense. And we're afraid. We're freaking out. We're gonna die. That's to the point where they got. So back to Jesus's words earlier in Mark 4, seeing they may see and not perceive, and hearing they may hear and not understand. So when Jesus talks about, you know, his followers or anyone where they hear the word, but they truly don't understand it because they respond out of fear, then it's as if they're seeing but not perceiving and hearing and not understanding, right? They just don't get it. So again, back to the seed, right? The seed was the same, but their response was one of these three, right? And again, it goes back to the four soils. Was it the soil, that the birds just pecked it out, or was it the soil that didn't have much soil, right? It was very shallow, or was it the soil that was choked out? So which one do you think this story represents? Which soil was there?
Mm. One that was choked out.
Exactly. You got it. You got it. Because it was the cares that parable says the cares of the world, the riches, it's the external circumstance that just choked it out. So
Mm.
that's exactly what was happening here with the disciples, is that they heard the word, they agreed with the word to some degree because they did get in the boat, right? They all got in the boat together, but then the responses were completely different. Jesus said, I know it, I believe it, my heart and it are in coherence, and his reflection was, I'm going to go to sleep. The disciples were, oh my gosh, we're going to die. So that word was choked out. So then what ends up happening? Here's a picture, right? I love this picture, right? These guys are just hanging on for dear life. It's like, oh my gosh, we're all going to die, raising their hands. And then they see Jesus in, just snoozing away because he knows, because of the word, there was mind heart coherence. We're going to make it to the other side. Circumstances don't matter. Only state of being matters, which is one of our 10 truths, by the way. And hopefully you guys are working on memorizing that. But that's what this story represents. And then, of course, Jesus comes to the rescue and he calms the storm. And the disciples are freaked out. It's like, man, even the storm, even the waves obey this man. Pretty incredible. So, back to the story. Did the disciples have the power within themselves to calm the storm?
They did, but they chose their circumstances.
All right, so let's do the why or why not. So they did have, so why did they have the power to be able to calm the storm? What gave them the ability to do that?
Um, they they had the seed within them.
Yes, exactly. And what was that seed specifically?
Um, the seed to believe, the seed to choose.
Right.
To,
So there's an overarching seed that's within every man, and that is that God is within us. Right? So there's the singular seed, that spark of God that's in all of us. But then there's all of these other seeds, right? The seeds of our thoughts and our fears and all of that. But specifically, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to answer the question. So this seed, the power that gave them the ability to calm the sea was the statement, let us go over to the other side. Because Jesus said it, because God said it, that meant that the power within the seed gave the disciples and Jesus the ability to go over to the other side, despite any circumstances. So the power was within the seed to make that happen. And if what was required to make that happen was to calm the sea, then the seed had the power to do that, right? So that's the why they did have the power, but why not? Why didn't they think they had the power within them to do that?
I didn't know who they were.
Yes, identity. Exactly. You got it. God's not that good. That's why we answer the question, is God really that good? God's not that good where he put the power within me to be able to calm the storm and calm the waves. That's not who I am. I'm not that big. But God is saying, I've given you everything. You've got everything that you need. So, what caused the disciples to not calm the storm?
Circumstances,
That's
fear,
right. Fear. You got it. So, according to these verses, what is the definition of fear?
um, the external,
Yep. Yep. You got it.
not
External.
the internal, it's the external
Yep.
circumstances.
You got it. And that always will lead to fear. Just like the four soils, those three soils, it'll always, come from a state of fear. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. God's not that good. I don't deserve it. I don't have the power within me to do that. And according to these verses, what's the definition of faith?
Um, rest, being still.
You got it. Right on. Yeah. Rest, asleep. It's like no care. You know, God's got this. Because,
Knowing,
sorry,
knowing,
knowing, yes.
believing, knowing.
And how does knowing come? Where does knowing come from?
Hmm.
How do
Hmm.
we get knowing? Maybe is the way to phrase it.
Um, I think we accept. We we have to come to a point of acceptance to believe
Right?
in
But
how God
how
good
how do
is.
we get there?
Um, well, faith, believing.
Right? But how do we get more faith? How do we get more believing? How do we get more
Mhm.
knowing?
Um, love and heart of love. That's good soil.
That is good soil. And I'm sorry, I'm looking for a very specific answer. So sorry that I keep tailing on this, but it's experience.
Yes.
You know through experience because it's happened before and it'll happen again. And experience comes from us being alert and awake and setting the intention for things, like just simple things. And I know people say this a lot, and it kind of cringe when I hear this too. But you know, a parking space in the front of the store, right? Oh, I thought of that. So now you know that that is possible. So now you translate that knowing into other things in your life. So it's the little things that then build and build and build and build. So you're building your knowing that all things are possible. So it's through experience, and that's the word I was looking for, is experience. And it's just the little things, right? Whether it's a hummingbird that shows up, or encounter with somebody that you were just thinking about. All of a sudden you realize that, wow, I am that powerful, and I am a co-creator, and that, these things happen for me. And in Revelations 1:6, and it says, and he made us kings and priests to God and his Father. To him be glory and honor and dominion forever and ever. So we are kings and priests on this planet. We are bringing heaven down. Heaven is within us, and we are to rule and to reign as a king, which means when there's a storm, when I know that God said, let's go over to the other side, that I have the ability within me to calm that storm. All right. So now we're going to end this with two more stories. We have Jesus, where he was with the Simon Peter, and he asked him to cast his net on the right side, and then Jesus putting mud on some people's eyes, a guy's eyes. And here's the story. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, here's the seed, put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch. Simon answered and says, Master, we worked hard all night and caught nothing. Circumstances, right? External. But I will do as you say and let down the nets. When they had done this, they enclosed a great quantity of fish, and their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners to the other boat for them to come and help them, and because they began to sink, right? So the seed was from the word of God that said, put down your nets. And Peter said, circumstances don't matter, only state of being matters, only your word matters, so I will do it. And then John 9, when he had said this, he spat on the ground, made clay in the spittle, and applied the clay to his eyes, and said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is translated sent. So he went away and washed and came back seeing. Right? So there's the seed. The seed was, I'm putting mud in your eyes, now go wash. To the fisherman and the blind man, looking and thinking at our physical eyes and ears, this does not make any sense, right? And I think you would agree. Okay, I've been fishing all night, and now you want me to cast it over here, and I'm going to catch some fish. That makes no sense. And then the blind guy, has got mud, go wash, and you're going to go see. I don't think so. I've been blind for a long time. I've washed my face before. How is that even possible? So Jesus asked these people to do something strange. They listened and were able to experience a miracle. What can you learn from this? So what's the walk away on these two things?
To to trust, to believe, to do.
Yeah. And allowing that seed to drop and be in a coherence. I'm in agreement with it. And I'm just going to do what it says.
Mm-hmm.
What were the differences between the disciples on the boat and these two encounters? Exactly. But they decided to listen to that voice and do what it said.
Mm-hmm.
So now we'll get practical. What is Spirit asking you to do that seems illogical, but or you sense him telling you to do it? And you don't have to get personal or anything. I don't want to, jeopardize anything, but, is there something that the Spirit is asking you to do that seems illogical, like, what do you mean I need to go wash my face and now I'm going to be able to see? We have to be willing to listen. And I'll use the word obey. I don't necessarily like that word, but we need to follow through. We need to follow what that voice is telling us. What seeds are you planting? Because every thought creates when combined with an elevated emotion and a belief in that thought. Then that seed grows, even as small as a mustard seed, as we talked about last week, into a large tree that birds can dwell in, right? Just takes a tiny seed. But what Storm, and actually that was 2 weeks ago, last week was the mountain, moving the mountain and the tree. What storm, mountain, or tree is in your way that is stopping you from producing? And I'll guarantee that it has to do with fear, and you're looking at external circumstances, right? That's that mountain or that tree that needs to be uprooted and cast into the sea. We've been covering this each week, but the question is, all right, Doug, what seeds do I plant? And these are 10 truths that were true for Jesus. Therefore, they're true for me. And these are the seeds that we should be planting, which is all my needs are constantly met. I've mentioned this a couple of times. Circumstances don't matter, only state of being matters. So these are the seeds that we should be planting. All right. Well, guess what? We are through the kingdom parables. Next week, we will have a summary of the seed and the sower, and we'll kind of go through each one of these and just kind of do a review. I think that's always a good idea to go back and remember what was discussed. The Hundredfold is on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and we have an extensive YouTube channel. So please go there. Again, that concludes the teaching for this morning. Thanks for joining us. Please access our website at thehundredfoldjourney.com through the QR code, and you can always reach out to me on email at thehundredfoldjourney@gmail.com. Thanks again, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.